The quantum arrays aboard the ESS Hyperion detected them first. Massive objects emerging from what appeared to be tears in reality itself. Admiral Elena Santos watched the holographic display as three crystalline vessels materialized near Jupiter's orbit, their surfaces rippling with impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. "All stations maintain observation protocols," she ordered, keeping her voice steady despite the growing unease in her gut. The Hyperion, Earth's most advanced deep space research vessel, had been investigating anomalous energy signatures when the visitors arrived. The alien ships dwarfed the Hyperion, each one nearly the size of a small moon. Their hulls seemed to be composed of living crystal that pulsed with internal energy in patterns that defied Euclidean geometry. For 72 hours, they'd made no hostile moves, simply holding position while Earth's government scrambled to form a unified response. When the aliens finally broadcast their message, it reached every quantum communications device simultaneously. They called themselves the Void Collective, a vast civilization claiming to span multiple dimensions. Their message seemed peaceful. They offered to share their advanced technology and help humanity transcend their physical limitations. The United Earth Council was cautiously optimistic. Dr. Maya Chen, the ship's lead quantum physicist, noticed something disturbing about the aliens' transmissions. "Admiral," she called out, "these quantum signatures, they're all wrong. The patterns suggest they're not just communicating. They're trying to establish quantum entanglement with our systems." Before she could elaborate further, the Void Collective revealed their true nature. The peaceful transmission was a Trojan horse, attempting to create quantum links that would allow them to invade and subsume human consciousness directly. The crystalline ships began emitting waves of horror space energy that drove anyone exposed into madness. The Hyperion barely escaped as Earth's outer defense platforms succumbed to the psychological assault. But as they fled deeper into the solar system, Dr. Chen continued analyzing the data. In humanity's darkest hour, she had discovered something that might give them a chance. The next 3 months saw humanity pushed to the brink. The Void Collective's methodology was insidious. They didn't destroy infrastructure or kill populations outright. Instead, they used their horror space technology to break down the mental barriers between individual human minds, forcing them into a hive mind state that they could control. Earth's conventional weapons proved useless against the crystalline ship's quantum-reinforced hulls. But in secret bunkers deep beneath the Earth's surface, Shen worked with a team of humanity's brightest minds to understand the nature of horror space itself. The Void Collective manipulated it through brute force, tearing holes between dimensions. But humans, with their unique individual consciousness, might be able to do something unprecedented: work with horror space harmoniously. Their entire civilization is built on forced conformity, Chen explained to the United Earth Council. They don't understand individual consciousness because they've never experienced it. But that's exactly why we might be able to develop a defense they can't counter, because they can't even conceive of it. The Council gave her everything she needed: resources, personnel, and most importantly, time. As the Void Collective slowly tightened their grip on the solar system, humanity prepared for what might be their last stand. But beneath the surface, a revolution in quantum consciousness was taking shape, one that would change the course of the war and humanity's place in the multiverse forever. 6 months into the invasion, Dr. Maya Chen stood in the heart of Project Bastion, 3 kilometers beneath the Rocky Mountains. The Quantum Consciousness Lab hummed with energy as test subjects underwent the experimental procedures that might be humanity's last hope. Lieutenant Sarah Cooper, a former fighter pilot, floated in one of the isolation tanks. Neural monitors tracked her brainwaves as she attempted to reach the state Chen's team called singular plurality, maintaining individual consciousness while touching the edges of horror space. "Brain patterns holding steady," reported Dr. James Wong, the team's neurologist. "She's managing to stay coherent longer than any previous subject." Chen watched the holographic display of Cooper's neural activity. where most humans exposed to horror space experienced complete psychological breakdown. Cooper was somehow dancing along its edges. Her consciousness remained distinct while still perceiving the impossible geometries of that other dimension. "Talk to me, Lieutenant." Chen spoke into the comm. "What do you see?" Cooper's voice came back steady, though with an odd echo that seemed to lag milliseconds behind her words. "It's beautiful in a terrible way. Like looking at an M.C. Escher drawing that's alive and infinite. I can feel the collective trying to reach in, but they're so clumsy. They don't understand what this place really is." The breakthrough came 3 hours later. Cooper emerged from the tank, shaking but triumphant. "I figured it out," she said, accepting a thermal blanket from the medical team. "The collective treats horror space like a weapon, forcing their way through it. But it's more like an ocean. You can't fight an ocean. You have to learn to swim." Over the next weeks, Chen's team refined their understanding. Horror space wasn't just a weapon or a means of faster-than-light travel. It was a fundamental aspect of consciousness itself. The Void Collective had discovered it by accident and learned to brutalize it into submission. Humanity, through necessity and innovation, was learning to work with it naturally. Every human mind is already touching horror space, Chen explained to Admiral Santos during a secure quantum briefing. "It's what gives us our ability to imagine, to dream, to think in abstract ways. The collective doesn't understand this because they gave up individual consciousness eons ago. They're trying to force their way into something they're already cut off from." The implications were staggering. If humans could learn to consciously manipulate their natural connection to horror space, they might be able to turn the collective's greatest weapon against them. But the training was grueling, and time was running out. Above ground, the Void Collective had consumed most of Earth's major population centers. Billions were already incorporated into their hive mind, their individual consciousness subsumed into the crystalline gestalt. The remaining free humans lived in hardened bunkers or nomadic groups, constantly moving to avoid detection. But in hidden facilities around the world, more volunteers underwent Chen's training program. Each success brought new insights. Horror space wasn't just about terror. It was about possibility, about the infinite potential of individual minds working in harmony while maintaining their distinct identities. Lieutenant Cooper led the first combat trials, teaching other pilots how to extend their consciousness into horror space while maintaining control of their ships. The results were beyond anything Chen had hoped for. The modified fighters could phase partially out of normal space, becoming invisible to the collective sensors. More importantly, they could project waves of structured consciousness that disrupted the collective's control over their human victims. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore," Cooper told her squadron during a briefing. "We're fighting for the very nature of human consciousness. The collective wants to make us all the same, to force us into their singular pattern. But our strength lies in being different, in thinking differently, in dreaming differently." As Project Bastion's successes mounted, Admiral Santos began preparing for a counteroffensive. Humanity would soon reveal that their greatest weakness, their stubborn individuality, was actually their greatest strength. The Void Collective had awakened something they couldn't comprehend, and humanity was about to show them the true power of billions of minds working together while remaining gloriously, terrifyingly unique. The hangar bay of humanity's last Pacific stronghold buzzed with activity as Lieutenant Cooper walked through rows of modified fighters. Each craft now carried what the engineers called consciousness amplifiers, devices that could project human thought patterns into horror space. The technology was a fusion of Dr. Chen's quantum theories and age-old meditation techniques that helped pilots maintain their mental stability. "Final systems check complete," reported Chief Engineer Nakamura, his holographic presence flickering beside Cooper. Like many support staff, he worked from secure bunkers deep underground, coordinating with the surface teams through quantum-encrypted channels. The neural interfaces are stable across all squadrons. Operation Mindstorm would be humanity's first major offensive against the Void Collective. The plan was audacious. Instead of trying to match the aliens' brute force approach to horror space, they would use their understanding of individual consciousness to create harmony cascades that could disrupt the collective's hive mind. Admiral Santos addressed the assembled pilots through their neural links. What we do today will determine whether humanity remains free to think, dream, and evolve on our own terms. The collective believes their unity makes them strong. We're about to show them that true strength comes from diversity. The attack began at dawn. 300 modified fighters lifted off from hidden bases around the globe, their horror space engines allowing them to slip through the gaps in the collective's sensor network. Cooper led the Pacific Squadron, her consciousness expanded by the amplifiers until she could perceive the quantum threads that bound reality together. Target in sight, she broadcast to her wing. The crystalline spire of a collective control node rose from the ruins of what had once been Singapore, its fractal surface pulsing with the stolen consciousness of millions of absorbed humans. Remember your training. Don't fight the horror space. Dance with it. The fighters began their attack run, but instead of conventional weapons, they projected waves of pure human consciousness. Dreams, memories, emotions, all the chaotic beauty of individual minds working in harmony while remaining distinct. The effect on the collective was devastating. The crystalline structures, designed to channel the uniform thoughts of their hive mind, couldn't handle the complexity of human mental patterns. Fractures appeared in their perfect geometries as the absorbed humans began to remember their individuality. It's working. Dr. Chen's voice crackled through the neural link. The harmony cascades are disrupting their control patterns. Keep pushing. Cooper dove her fighter through impossible angles, her expanded consciousness allowing her to perceive paths through reality that the collective couldn't comprehend. Each pass sent new waves of human thought patterns crashing against the crystalline walls. The entire structure began to resonate with discordant frequencies. But the collective wasn't defeated easily. Massive crystalline defenders emerged from horror space, their forms twisted into weapons of pure geometric horror. They projected waves of enforced unity, trying to crush the human pilots' individual minds into their pattern. Hold formation, Cooper commanded, even as reality seemed to bend around them. They can only think as one. That's their weakness. Show them what billions of unique minds can do together. The squadron shifted into what they called kaleidoscope formation, each pilot projecting their consciousness slightly out of phase with the others. The combined effect was like a mental prism, refracting the collective's unity beam into countless individual thoughts and memories. The crystalline defenders began to fragment, unable to maintain their coherence in the face of such complexity. More importantly, the absorbed humans in the control node began to wake up. Millions of individual minds stirred within the crystalline prison, their renewed sense of self-creating feedback loops that the collective couldn't contain. Second phase initiating, Admiral Santos announced. All squadrons begin consciousness extraction protocols. This was the most delicate part of the operation. Using the quantum technology developed by Dr. Chen's team, the fighters began carefully untangling human minds from the collective's control, storing their patterns in specialized quantum matrices until their original bodies could be recovered or new ones grown. The Singapore node collapsed in a cascade of shattering crystal, releasing thousands of freed minds. Similar reports began coming in from other strike teams around the globe. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity was taking back territory, not just physical space, but the sacred space of individual consciousness. In the Quantum Command Center beneath Mount Fuji, Dr. Chen studied the horror space readings with growing excitement. The Void Collective's perfectly ordered patterns were showing signs of fracture, psychological fault lines spreading through their hive mind like cracks in crystal. They're experiencing confusion on a fundamental level, she explained to Admiral Santos, manipulating the holographic display to highlight the chaotic patterns. Every human mind we free introduces more complexity into their system. They're being forced to experience individuality for the first time in their existence. The collective's response to Operation Mindstorm had been revealing. Instead of the calculated efficiency they'd shown during the invasion, their movements had become erratic, almost desperate. Their crystalline ships now moved in disjointed patterns, as if different parts of the hive mind were giving contradictory orders. Lieutenant Cooper's voice came through the quantum link, her consciousness partially phased into horror space as she led another raid. "You need to see this, Doctor. The Collective's trying to rebuild their control nodes, but the new structures are wrong. They keep shifting between patterns, like they can't decide on a single form." The holographic displays showed the truth of Cooper's words. Where the Collective's architecture had once been perfect crystalline fractals, their new constructions were asymmetrical, chaotic. Some structures seemed to be fighting against their own geometry, twisting into shapes that reflected the growing discord within the hive mind. "They're experiencing an identity crisis on a civilizational scale," Dr. Wong observed, his neural monitoring equipment tracking the massive disturbances in horror space. Their entire society is built on perfect uniformity. Now they're being forced to confront the concept of individual variation, and they can't handle it. The breakthrough came during a battle over the ruins of Moscow. Cooper's squadron had engaged a major collective fleet, using their harmony cascades to disrupt the enemy's cohesion. But this time, something different happened. Instead of simply breaking apart, one of the crystalline ships began broadcasting on human frequencies. "Please, help us understand." The transmission was fragmented, multiple voices speaking in discord. "We remember being separate, being unique. It hurts, but we want to remember more." Dr. Chen's instruments confirmed what seemed impossible. A portion of the Collective was actively trying to break away from the hive mind. The enforced unity that had held their civilization together for eons was unraveling, and some of them wanted it to happen. "This is our chance," Admiral Santos decided. "All squadrons, switch to Protocol Omega. Don't just attack their unity. Show them what true harmony looks like." The modified fighters began broadcasting a new type of consciousness pattern. Instead of simply disrupting the Collective's hive mind, they demonstrated how individual minds could work together while maintaining their distinct identities. They showed the beauty of voluntary cooperation, of unity achieved through choice rather than force. The effect rippled through horror space like a shockwave. More crystalline ships began breaking formation, their perfect geometries dissolving into organic, individualized patterns. The Collective's invasion force was experiencing an awakening, or perhaps more accurately, a reawakening. "They're not just an alien hive mind," Dr. Chen realized, watching the cascade of consciousness transformations spreading through the enemy fleet. "They're what happens when a civilization gives up individuality for the illusion of perfect unity. And now they're remembering what they lost." But not all of the Collective embraced this awakening. The central consciousness, the part that had maintained control for countless millennia, fought against the change with increasing violence. It lashed out with weapons that distorted not just space, but consciousness itself, trying to force its scattered children back into uniformity. "Multiple quantum anomalies detected," Wong reported, his instruments struggling to track the chaos in horror space. "The core consciousness is trying to collapse all possibilities into a single pattern. If they succeed, they'll not only destroy the awakening members of their own species, they'll create a psychological singularity that could damage the consciousness of every sentient being in the solar system." Cooper's voice cut through the quantum static. "Then we don't let them succeed. All squadrons, form up on my position. We're going to show them the true power of humanity's greatest gift, the strength to be ourselves, even in the face of oblivion." The final battle for the future of consciousness itself was about to begin, and humanity would fight it not with weapons of mass destruction, but with the indomitable power of billions of individual minds choosing to stand together. The space above Earth had become a battlefield of consciousness. Lieutenant Cooper led her squadron through impossible geometries as the core of the Void Collective unleashed its final desperate assault. The enemy's remaining ships had merged into a single vast crystalline entity that defied Euclidean geometry, its surface reflecting the madness of enforced unity. All pilots, maintain your individual patterns, Cooper commanded. Her consciousness expanded through horror space. Don't let their singularity draw you in. Remember who you are. Dr. Chen's voice came through the neural link, steady despite the chaos surrounding them. The core consciousness is trying to create a quantum resonance that would force all awareness into its pattern. We need to disrupt their frequency before they can stabilize it. The human fleet moved in perfect asymmetry, each pilot projecting their unique mental signature while still working in harmony with the others. They had learned that true strength came not from enforced uniformity, but from the dynamic balance of individual minds choosing to work together. Show them what humanity really is. Admiral Santos broadcast to all forces. Not a hive mind, not a chaos of separate entities, but a symphony of unique voices creating something greater than themselves. Cooper led her squadron into a spiraling attack pattern, their consciousness amplifiers projecting waves of human experience into the crystalline megastructure. Each pilot shared their most profound memories, moments of joy, grief, triumph, and failure. The raw authenticity of human emotion crashed against the collective's rigid patterns. Deep within the crystalline entity, more voices began to wake up. The awakening members of the collective, those who had begun to remember their lost individuality, fought against their central consciousness. The perfect geometric structure began to fracture, new patterns emerging that reflected the beauty of individual variation. "It's working," Dr. Wong reported, his instruments tracking the cascade of consciousness transformations. "The rigid patterns are breaking down. They can't maintain uniformity in the face of so much authentic individual experience." But the core consciousness wouldn't go quietly. It lashed out with weapons that distorted the fabric of reality itself, trying to force everything, human and awakened collective alike, into its singular pattern. Several human fighters were caught in the reality distortion, their pilots' minds nearly crushed by the pressure of enforced unity. Cooper dove her fighter through the chaos, her expanded consciousness finding paths that shouldn't exist. "Focus on the resonance points," she commanded. "Don't fight their pattern. Show them a better way. Show them what they've forgotten." The human fleet began broadcasting on all frequencies, not just their tactical communications, but their thoughts, dreams, and memories. They showed the collective what they had lost: the joy of discovery, the comfort of genuine connection, the strength that comes from choosing to stand together rather than being forced into unity. The crystalline megastructure's perfect geometry began to dissolve, transforming into something new. Where there had been rigid patterns, organic forms emerged. The awakening members of the collective weren't just breaking free, they were rediscovering their original nature. "Multiple consciousness signatures detected," Wong announced. "They're individualizing. Each one is developing its own unique pattern while maintaining harmonic resonance with the others." The core consciousness made one final attempt to restore its control, concentrating its remaining power into a beam of pure enforced unity. But humanity was ready. Every fighter in the fleet projected their consciousness in concert, not merging but harmonizing, creating a symphony of individual minds that diffracted the unity beam into countless possibilities. The effect was devastating. The crystalline megastructure shattered, not into chaos, but into billions of distinct forms, each one representing a newly awakened individual consciousness. The core of the collective, the force that had maintained control for eons, dissolved into the quantum foam of horror space. In the aftermath, as Earth's forces began the work of helping both freed humans and awakened collective members adjust to their individuality, Dr. Chen made a profound observation. "We didn't just win a war," she told Admiral Santos. "We proved something fundamental about the nature of consciousness itself. True strength doesn't come from perfect unity or complete independence, but from the beautiful balance between them." The Void Collective's invasion had forced humanity to confront the deepest questions about consciousness and identity. In rising to that challenge, they had not only saved themselves, but had helped an ancient civilization remember what it had lost. As the freed minds, both human and former collective, began to rebuild, They did so with a new understanding, that the greatest horror was not the darkness between stars or the strange geometries of other dimensions, but the loss of what makes each consciousness unique and precious. Earth's victory wasn't marked by the destruction of an enemy, but by the awakening of billions of new minds to the power and beauty of individual consciousness. The horror space that had once been a weapon became a frontier for exploration, as humanity and their former enemies learned to navigate the infinite possibilities of existence while remaining gloriously, terrifyingly themselves.